Hello and welcome to HealthTech Voices. I'm Sanjay Subramanian, Senior Vice President and Head of the Healthcare Payer Business Unit here at Cognizant. On each of our episodes, I will speak to a healthcare thought leader on how they see technology currently affecting the industry and how emerging tech could drive innovation and improvements in efficiency, compliance, and member experiences. We'll touch on topics like artificial intelligence, automation, cloud, and cybersecurity, amongst others. I hope these conversations spark new ideas on which technologies and approaches you can use to help improve your organization and prepare for the future. You can also keep an eye on Cognizant's social media for more of our thoughts on advancing the healthcare industry through technology. Our guest today is Paul Hlivko, who serves as Executive Vice President and Chief Information and Digital Officer for Wellmark, an independent licensee of the Blue Cross Blue Shield Association. As leader of Wellmark's technology teams, Paul provides transformational leadership and strategy to create exceptional value and member experiences through the innovative, effective, and secure use of technology. With more than 20 years of experience in driving change through technology, he's a wonderful first guest for our podcast. Please join me in welcoming Paul.
Thank you, Sanjay. I'm excited to be here and share the next 30 minutes with you.
So we've gone ahead and recorded this as a two-part conversation between myself and Paul. The first part is really going to talk about, transformation, industry drivers, and the kind of technology imperatives that we are seeing out there in the industry. And part two is really going to talk and explore more about the human dimension, the kind of challenges, the kind of motivations, and how you go about addressing that in a fast-paced innovation environment. So, Paul, I'm going to go ahead and get right into this. I know we've been talking a lot in the lead up to this podcast around, some of the headwinds and the tailwinds that we are seeing, buffeting the healthcare industry. But as we think about this more broadly, the healthcare industry continues to face a multitude of transformative forces, both in the delivery of care and its funding mechanisms. I'd love to start by getting your thoughts on the principal forces that are currently shaping our industry as we see it.
Yeah, sure. So I've had the fortune to be in this industry for the past 8 years, and as you noted in my intro, spent a lot of time in financial services. And one thing that really fascinated me about the transition from financial services to healthcare or health insurance is just the complexity of the dynamics, the forces, how the structure of the industry is constituted, and the number of, whether it's parties, whether it's trends, drivers that you need to really have a good pulse on in order to shape strategy and execution in a firm. So as I think we're sitting in 2024, as I think about what's on the horizon, 5 different kind of categories of pressures or drivers come to mind for me. First is the innovation cycle. Second, some environmental factors I'll talk about. Third, the shifting of consumer demand on our industry. Fourth, the role of government or society in healthcare. And last, not certainly least, is technology and information access. And when I think about going through those, innovation first, it's one of the industries where innovation doesn't necessarily drive improvement to the cost structure. Like if I reflect on specialty pharmacy as an example, that's increasing cost structure, but it's extending life and improving health outcomes. Or you think about medical devices that have been invented over time, contributing to the cost structure, extending life, improving health outcomes. Whereas a lot of the other industries you operate in, technology and innovation tend to drive efficiency and productivity in the cost structure and more competitiveness in the market. So it kind of plays both roles in our industry. Innovation in particular does. When I think about environmental factors, one of the exogenous things that impact us is just life expectancy and the population of the health. So life expectancy in the U.S. continues to grow, other than a small dip during the pandemic. So there's more people to insure over the course of time. And then the population overall, in certain aspects, has a declining health. So a sicker population tends to be more expensive to care for as well. So 2 factors that really influence how we think about investing and how we think about improving health outcomes for the people that we serve. On consumer demand, I mean, just over the last couple of years alone, the drive for transparency in the market, pricing, interoperability, the exchange of healthcare data, this push and pull of trust and privacy in our industry, especially with AI coming onto the scene, what benefits can be driven by that. But there's this constant struggle back and forth with trusting the industry and the ecosystem to provide new solutions, but also protecting the privacy of consumers at the same time. And then digital divide or equity continues to be a topic of conversation on consumer demand. So ensuring that we're addressing access to care and inequities that exist in any market. And the digital divide, or really the digital evolution, has put stress on that factor, where that adoption curve around digital tends to advantage the folks that already have resources and have access to care more so than those that don't. So it's something that we need to pay close attention to. On government and society, I mean, the share of government in financing of healthcare continues to grow. The question is, like, how much tolerance is going to be there within society to continue that shaping of who's financing healthcare over time, and then the distribution of the dollars to caring for the sick versus investing in wellness is this constant struggle that also exists in the industry. And then finally, I mean, as a technology professional, I mean, it's always a factor that drives industry change, especially the last 20 or 30 years. It's hard to not talk about the influence of AI and the human and machine interface over the course of time. How's that going to change care? Location of care could change over time as more devices end up in the home, whether it's monitoring devices or ambient devices that can detect health outcomes of the people in close proximity. So I think there's quite a bit of evolutions that's going to occur just strictly on the back of technology as well. So I continue to be fascinated. I mean, we are all working to ultimately improve health outcomes of the populations we serve. And these forces are quite complex, and trying to wield them and ensure that we're making a good, positive impact in society is always top of mind.
Now, this is very interesting, Paul, and thank you for covering a broad swath of some of the existential challenges, as I like to think about it, that we are facing with our industry as a whole. But there's still plenty of goodness out there, as you correctly pointed out. I think this also serves as a perfect segue for me to explore the next topic, which is really around, when we think about establishing a digital infrastructure that can typically help tackle a lot of the challenges that you expounded on. How are you typically navigating the digital transition, especially in the face of existing legacy systems and large swaths of technological debt that many healthcare organizations contend with today?
I mean, it's challenging for any organization. You kind of point out the two pulling forces. One, the legacy technical debt that exists in any industry that tends to hold innovation back, and then two, establishing whatever that go forward infrastructure is, and you've termed it digital infrastructure in this case. Often you find organizations in what's called the capability trap. Where investment goes into short-term performance to boost near-term outcomes. And that tends to limit the investment going to long-term foundational infrastructure that allows you in year 3, 4, 5, and 6 to be more competitive as innovation comes on the scene. And the more you get that ratio incorrect, it really builds up the kind of atrophy of your capabilities. Or you refer to it as technical debt or legacy systems. And that's tough to get out of. That tends to, over the long run, erode an organization's capabilities. Performance falls a bit behind. And really the way to get out of it is it's expensive, right? It takes a one-time large investment that many organizations have a challenge making in order to retire that debt that hadn't been invested in adequately over the course of a half a decade or more sometimes. So it's a constant struggle. I think one thing that influences it is our mental models of those that are making investments. So if you think about the traditional capital investments, you have a one-time investment, then maintenance and outlay. It's a bit lumpy, right? So building a building, investing in materials, physical assets, they tend to be a bit more lumpy and have a run out. I think tech's quite a bit different. It is more of a reoccurring tuning of the investment mix, and it's not as lumpy, right? So you need to make sure you're matching the investment cycle of a company with the pace of change in the industry. And I think that's often a challenge organizations are facing. And then within that investment mix, how much is going towards learning and innovation cycles versus how much is going to maintaining your current capabilities so they don't atrophy. All of this is necessary to build the digital infrastructure, which is really the second point you hit on. And when I think about digital infrastructure, like the first thing that comes to mind for many is tech. And yes, there are aspects of tech that are digital infrastructure, but I also think about the ways of working, how organizations ingest innovation and manage innovation value stream, what the learning cycles are in innovation loops. Because end of the day, you have a living, breathing organization that needs to adapt to market cycles. And to me, that digital infrastructure and the human infrastructure around that is equally as important as whether you're adopting cloud, whether you're looking at IoT or looking at AI. I mean, those are all necessary, and 10 years from now, it's going to be different nouns. But I think what's most important is figuring out how you design an organization that has quick learning loops and innovation cycles that can adapt to the changing digital infrastructure of the day, right? Today, it's the things I mentioned, but 10 years from now, it's going to be something different.
So, Paul, that's very well articulated in terms of, some of the priorities that most organizations have to contend with, which is really the RPMs at which they run their own organization and prioritize between short-term and long-term growth, and at the same time being forced to look at, what their ultimate constituents, that is the members, right, that we serve, really need, and the timing of those needs. So I think that's always something that all organizations, including yours, have to work through. You spoke a little bit about the fact that you've been an early adopter in the digital transformation journey. I'd be really interested in understanding what are some of the lessons that you learned along the way, and also how do you go about defining and measuring success in a transformation initiative such as yours?
There's one concept that I always think about in context of learning organizations, and it's called the Yerkes-Dodson curve. And the concept of it is there's a certain amount of stretch and challenge that you need to inject into an organization to keep it learning and to keep it on its toes and keep it nimble. If you do too little, it atrophies because it's not being challenged. If you do too much, it atrophies because of burnout or overuse, right? So there's this equilibrium of challenge state that you always want your teams, your organization to be in. So it's constantly sensing and learning from the outside and learning from peers inside the organization as well. And I think that's hopefully where we're at or trying to continue to be at. You mentioned what we've learned along the way. One thing that we're still working through is we changed a lot about how the technology organization operates. New reference architecture, new structure, new operating model, new ways of working, new culture, which I mentioned. Full cloud adoption. We're still tuning how the teams work together to engineer products, right? So ensuring that we have full value alignment, there's enough autonomy in teams, they understand the left and right boundaries to run fast. So we continue to tweak and organize our teams in ways that try to extract more value through them understanding what decision authority they have so that they can feel more independent and operate aligned to our strategy, but aligned to the market needs and the customers that they're working for on their product teams. And that's something that, 8 years ago, we probably could have started on earlier, but there were a lot of ingredients that also needed to be in place for that to be effective. And it's something that we've learned just through working through the transformation that is a constant tuning activity. And then the last thing you asked about was how do we measure? That's by far the most difficult. I would share that if you're making incremental changes to your organization, it's pretty easy to measure because you're using what you currently measure today. When you're making transformational structural changes, you can't measure the same things you're measuring today. So you need to look for early indicators of success. Sometimes it's just activity-based. You need to do qualitative assessments. So boots on the ground, focus groups, learning from the people that are doing, through observation, through your own eyes, so that you can, one, extract stories to tell about the transformation, but you can also see firsthand where you need to course correct or change the approach you have to leading whatever that digital transformation is. And then the last thing I would share on measurement is don't underestimate the option value of something you're doing now for something you don't know about 5 years from now. So when we one of our pillars of the transformation was cloud adoption for access to innovation cycles and whatnot that I've shared. But the option value of that now is, as AI shows up on the scenes, we're well prepared. Like, did we know that exact timing 7-8 years ago when we started down our transformation? No, not necessarily. Was I able to quantify that value extraction? Not exactly. But you need to think about what you're doing in the near term and its option value long term, because a lot of what you're going to build in the next 3 to 5 years is going to be what is needed or may benefit something that shows up on the scene in years 6, 7, and 8.
So Paul, I think you touched upon something that's very important aspect that is often ignored when it comes to transformation programs. That is trying to think and anticipate ahead in terms of what comes next. And we are all living in a world today wherein technology S-curves are accelerating all the time, right? And the emergence of new technologies can often take us by surprise when we are midway, through a transformation program, which is multi-year in nature and scope. Given all this, you gave us some insight into the way you try to adopt and create a forward-thinking culture within your organization. But I'd love to hear more about how you integrate critical aspects of these emerging technologies into your transformation and ensuring that it stays relevant going forward.
So how much of it do you want it to be planned, quote unquote? So centralized administration of your company versus how much do you want it to be organic so that the organization and different teams in the organization sees what's happening out in the market and senses the opportunities and brings in that new technology at an appropriate time, and then is able to effectively think through all the considerations around security, risk management, value to the market for that new tech. So I think you have this constant push and pull in an organization of how much do you plan? So planning would be you form steering committees, you have a chief of fill in the blank new technology, you treat it as something special, versus how much do you let the democracy inside of your company bring in the new ideas and test and learn through their normal testing and learning cycles. And then you're just acting as an accelerant or a decelerant to that work.
So in today's session with Paul, we spoke about the challenges facing the healthcare industry in general and the kind of digital infrastructure that is required to be built by organizations to help contend with and deal with these challenges successfully. We also spoke about the innovation imperative and how organizations like Paul's are going ahead and delivering transformation. In the next edition of this podcast, we're going to have Paul dwell a little bit more into the human element in terms of what are those critical elements that enable the people that are really the lifeblood of our business be able to step up and perform at the next level to make this transformation and innovation possible. Thanks for listening. To hear more from Paul, look for him and follow him on LinkedIn. To know more about our healthcare practice, visit us at www.cognizant.com/healthcare. And be sure to subscribe on your podcast app to be alerted to new episodes of HealthTech Voices. I'm Sanjay Subramanian, and I will see you next time.